Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we got a first impressions video on a zero tolerance. So for those of you who've been around a little bit, you know I've already done a first impressions on the 0393 and the 0609. So that really only leaves one knife behind, and that is what we're looking at today, the 0462. So let's get this opened up and take a look here. By the way, while I'm doing this, I have to say a huge thank you to Scott, Real Bush Monkey EDC. I will put a link to his Instagram down below, and if you're not following him, you definitely should. He has an amazing knife collection and also has a pretty cool line of work. So he gets to post some really cool pictures on Instagram that I definitely appreciate. By the way, while you're following him, you may as well follow me as well. And I'll put that link down in the description box too. Okay, so let's take a look at this knife, beginning with all the features. And what I will do at the end here for just sort of a little extra teaser, if you will, is I'll pull out the other two ZTs and kind of give my thoughts on those two as well. So first of all, let's start with this guy and take a look at that very nice 20 CV blade, flat grind, and I really like ZT's factory satin. On the spine of the blade, there's a stone wash, as well as on the flats up here by the handle. Really nice sort of Persian style upswept tip. And over on this side, you can see they've got all of their little information there. I don't know. I don't love this being here. I will say, I think it stands out more because this side is really cool, where they've just got it totally sterile. It looks really awesome. And then when you flip it over, it kind of takes a little bit away from that. Although honestly, it doesn't bother me all that much. So blade here, 20 CV, which is great steel. And I would suspect, in fact, well, I will tell you, it's a little thinner behind the edge than a lot of ZTs, which is going to make this a little bit nicer as a slicer, even though it still has fairly thick blade stock, probably right around 1/8 of an inch, maybe even a little bit more than that. All right, moving on to the lock, we have a very nice action on this titanium frame lock. And Scott, if you're watching this, buddy, I would say the action on this is very nice, but it could be improved just a little bit. I would say take this knife down, clean it up a little bit, and put just a drop of oil on that pivot, and it would go from great to amazing. Okay, really nice decorative pivot here. You can see the milling on this show side. There you go. And Torx construction over here, so you can adjust that. Handle sort of has that bent shape that we're used to seeing from Persian style blades. Puts me in mind a little bit of the cold steel Tawar, if you're familiar with that knife. And again, this is, you know, even similar in size, you know, blade length and handle size and stuff like that. So now that we've kind of taken a look through everything, oh yeah, I should mention aluminum backspacer here, double position clip, tip up, right or left side carry. And since we're talking about construction, take a look in there. Well, seem to be completely unable to show you. There we go. If I can reflect a little light off my fingers, you can see the milling in there. So this titanium side has been milled out to save a little bit of weight there. Now, let me give you a size and weight on this knife. So what we have here is pretty well exactly 9 inches in overall size. Now, this measurement's going to be an interesting one. So if I go to the frame, which is the way most law enforcement people usually deal with it, it's going to be about 3 5/8. But in actuality, if I come back here to the bottom of the cutting edge, I actually have about 4 1/8 inches of actual cutting edge. Now, part of this back here is not going to be super usable. In fact, you almost could have put a choil there. Anyway, that's a discussion for a different day, perhaps in a full review. But the blade length is going to be, you know, 3 5/8 or 4 1/8, depending on how you look at it. And let me give you an overall handle length as well. There you go. So that handle is landing about 5 5/16. All right. Which is actually a fairly large knife, guys. So this knife, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a huge knife in hand and certainly not in pocket either, but it's, you know, it's a full 9 inches. So we're actually dealing with a fairly large knife. Let's grab a weight here. Okay, so that is in ounces. And 3.9 ounces is our number, which for a knife of this size is actually really, really impressive. Consider that the Para 2 weighs like 3.8 ounces. So very nicely done on the overall weight of this knife. Now, let me give you sort of my thoughts on this. This knife, guys, is definitely a very style-oriented knife and certainly a little scarier than various other options that could be named. However, okay, I do find that it's very comfortable in hand, and I do find this blade shape, and I've had a couple of knives with a Persian style blade, not most notably probably the Cold Steel Talwar, but I've noticed that this blade shape is a really useful blade shape for cutting stuff, which is essentially what we want our knives to do. And so I actually think this could be a fairly nice large EDC. Within, yeah, you're going to have to be maybe a little bit aware of how and where you take this out if you're in public, but I think the performance on it is going to be just fine. There will be, of course, those who just buy this because they like Sinkovich and they want something from him. They like the Persian design. And I think, I'm somewhere in the middle of those two. I definitely like the design here. And I can still see this knife's value as an EDC. Let me throw in the other two ZTs for this year, and just let me give you sort of my impressions, if you will. So these are the three knives that we have from Zero Tolerance so far. And as I said, we would expect to see a couple more models come out at Blade Show, but that hasn't happened yet. So what I find in these three knives is, in terms, let me speak, especially in terms of my own expectations. When I first saw these released, I was a little underwhelmed, honestly, by these two. I think largely with the 0462, it was mostly because I was not a fan of the 0460. And, having given it some thought and, of course, having handled this knife, I definitely like it a lot more than I initially thought that I would. And I can also say that for the 0609. Now, the 0609 is not a knife that I would buy or really want to own, while the 0462 definitely is. This knife is still a little small for me, but I have to say I love the blade shape on this knife. And then, of course, the 0393, essentially the 0393 was about what I expected, and what I expected was pretty good. So the fact that it lived up to my expectation was quite pleasant. I think all of these make pretty nice pieces in terms of a good marriage between a usable knife and a very attractive collectible knife as well. So, you're getting a lot of cool design here, but you're also getting a pretty well-made, useful tool. And so that's what I think about the 0462. I think it's a great tool. I think it's going to feel great in hand. I think this is a really nice user. In fact, this is very, very close to the previous Sinkovich knife from ZT, the 0452. And I actually think this is going to be a slightly better user, because the relationship between the blade and the handle means that I'm going to have a little more cutting power. I'm going to be, if I push straight down, I'm actually cutting somewhere out here, where the 0452, I was really more back here cutting, and that creates a bit of a leverage arm. So I could actually see this being a little more ergonomic in use than the other large Sinkovich ZT. There you go, guys. Those are my initial thoughts on this knife. Look forward to the full review coming up probably in, a few weeks to a month. I don't know why it keeps going out of focus every time I put it down, but anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.